Stop it. We're not saying that on camera.
Welcome back. You saw us update you guys on the build progress of the Corolla. But today I really wanted to spend some time telling you everything that we learned for AGE swapping a TE72. There's really no video out there that tells you everything you need to know about doing this swap. And so we figured we'd give you everything we learned in one quick little video. You could fast forward to what you need to know in one shot. So let's get right into it, shall we? All right, here's the engine in all its glory. She's a work in progress, a little bit more changes from the last video. Shout out to Home Depot gardening section to keep the hood up. First thing you need to know is if you have a TE72 and you want to put a 4AG in it, the steering box, this, is going to get in your way. Most headers for the 4AG do not clear the pitman arm of the steering box. And that's kind of a pain because you're forced to do some sort of subframe swap to steering rack swap to either steering column swap. Excessive makes a steering rack. You can get a 4AGE or you can get an AE86 steering rack and get adapters, but this is going to be your first problem. Steering box is going to get in the way. Issue number 2, all the critical things that make the engine run on a 3TC are on the passenger side, and on the 4AG, they're on the driver side. And here's a great example. Things like the distributor is on the driver side, but on the 3TC, it's on the passenger side. So your distributor needs to have leads made that go all the way around the engine and plug in to the distributor. These are just temporary, just to see if the engine would crank, but you have to adjust your wiring harness. Another thing too is the starter over here is in the same spot, so that's helpful, but the alternator is not. The alternator on the USDM 4AGEs is on the passenger side. Yes, you can get a bracket to move it to the driver side, but then it makes this driver area that much more busy. You have alternator, oil filter, and then maybe oil filter cooling lines, then you have starter, and then you have header. So like on this side, it gets really bad. Another thing is you're going to need some essential items to get the engine to run. You're going to need a fuel pump, an electronic fuel pump, to feed the engine. We have a carburetor set up on ours, so we need 3 PSI, and we're going to run AN lines and a fuel pressure regulator into the carbs. But the 3TC has a mechanical fuel pump that runs off the movement on the engine. The 4AG requires an electric fuel pump, and so instead of buying an AE86 gas tank, we're just going to put an electric pump, in my hand, into the fuel lines back there and run into the 4AG. That's super easy to do, fuel pressure regulator, 3 PSI. And let's get into controlling the engine. We went with the Pertronix ignition box. We're gonna try and get this to run. A lot of people who carburate their 4AGE run an MSD, but babe, do you even know what this is?
No idea.
All right, well, basically what this is the rev limiter for our engine.
You know what I thought it was?
What?
Remember you made me guess.
What was it?
I was like, this is the electrical box. We're gonna put all of the electrical connected to the main server.
Main server. Oh, so it has Wi-Fi now. No. The reason why we bought this, babe, what happened with the 3TC when we first bought it?
It blew up.
Why?
Oh.
What happened?
It wouldn't stop revving.
Right.
It wouldn't stop going.
It wouldn't stop going, and that's because it didn't have a rev limiter. So that brings me to my point. The 3TC on the TE72 does not have a rev limiter, and after we built this beautiful engine, we're going to put a rev limiter on it, and so we turned to Pertronix because, one, I like the packaging. The size will be right against the firewall there or inside the glove box. And 2, it gives the engine a little bit more spark. And 3, we can control the RPMs on it. Here we go. Boom. So we're going to run this on the 4AG to make sure we save the engine. Finally, back to the engine. None of the wiring on the TE72 will really work with a 4AGE, especially if you're going to do a fuel injected one with the computer. The fuse box is different. The alternator igniter box or voltage regulator is different. Even just the wiring all in general is different. Some of the sensors are the same, but for the most part, everything's different. And so you're going to spend some time on wiring. Now, I got something that I'm working here. I'm going to put the box here and put a cover on it. Then we'll put our igniter here, and then we'll put a nice racing battery here, and we'll clean up all this. You can see I'm basically in the progress of this, and then we'll do the radiator. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want everything to work. I want the windshield wipers to work. I want all the dash lights to turn on. And we'll fast forward to that footage. But in order to make it done right, yeah, sure, you can run this with like race car switches in your car, turn on the fuel pump, turn on the alternator, battery, whatever. But I wanted everything to be on the key. And so we'll jump into that footage. The heater works. Look, the heater's on. The brake warning light is working. The oil pressure light is working. The grounds are working. The temperature gauge works. The fuel gauge works. The speedometer works. That was big for us. And guess what? Check it out. The car cranks over. Let's put this in neutral. I don't know where neutral is. There we go. There we go. Okay, I think we're in neutral. There we go. All right, let's see. Ready? Listen. She cranks over. So I wanted everything to work as it should. I wanted the key to turn on the car. I didn't want a fuse panel for a fuel pump. I wanted the charge light to work. I wanted the brake light to work. I wanted all these things to work. A piece of plastic just fell off. And so you're gonna run into that as you do this swap. This gauge cluster cannot be really modified. It's just how it is, and that's it. I have a solution that we're gonna put in the car later that's a nice little tack here that I'll show you that's period correct, but that's something to consider. So, and there's a lot of other things too, and we'll get into them in a second, but I wanted to show y'all that the key was really the priority. So we'll get this out. Great, so yeah, now you know that wiring is gonna be not too hard, but it'll be a pain in the butt. That's everything that we could think of that you need to know when you 4AGE swap your car. Of course, there are some things that could help save the day, like if you want to use the 3TC cross member, that is fine. If you want to bolt in a T50 to the TE72, the GTS T50 cross member doesn't line up to 4 bolts. It only lines up to 2. Sorry, there's no footage of that, but it'll still hold it, and the engine will hold in the cradle, but it won't be very strong, so you're gonna have to fab something up. Another thing too is most of the AE86 suspension components, wheel hubs, brakes, and brake lines all bolt in to the TE72. Another thing to remember is the drive shafts are going to be a little bit different and require some finagling. Yes, my garage is a mess, I don't care, but you can see we have 2 drive shafts here. We're going to use the front half of a AE86 Corolla, and then we're going to use the back half of a TE72 to bolt into our TE72 rear end. Now, if you went full Celica GTS rear end, sure, you just run the whole 2-piece drive shaft and you're done. But one, we can't find the GTS rear end that doesn't cost as much as the car right now. So if anyone has one for sale, drop a comment. I'll buy it from you. And then 2, we just want to drive the car. We're not trying to be, shout out to Squeeze86. We're not trying to be him. We're not trying to be Initial D. We're not trying to be Final Bout. We just want to go have fun in the car. So the stock rear end will work, but it's not really driftable yet. But anyway, if somebody has a rear end and they want to sell it, we'll buy it for sure. But that's about it for this one. It was a really quick and dirty video. Thanks so much for watching. Everything you need to know about putting a 4AGE inside your TE72. It bolts in, things work, but there's a lot of things that you don't think about, and they all add up. And so hopefully you're watching this video and it helps you get further down the road. If you have questions, we get notifications to our phones, we get notifications to our devices. Drop them in the YouTube chat and we'll answer them. Some silly questions like, hey Mike, what is the thread pitch for the fuel feeder for Weber carbs? If you look on summitracing.com and you say Weber carb AN fuel fitting, they'll send you the wrong one. That shit is not online anywhere. So ask us a question. We learned a lot during this process. And if you guys like this, what we can do is once the car is going, we'll do a full like 20-minute video of every single part that we changed on this car to get it running. But I think we're pretty close. We have some big plumbing items that need to get here. Brake lines, coolant lines, radiator, transmission, clutch lines, all that stuff needs to come here, and then I think we'll be rocking and rolling. Thanks so much for watching. I'm going to end it, and we'll see you on the next one.